All right, good people, Antec is back, baby. You remember the FT1. We've done a few videos on it in terms of performance, airflow configuration. I love that they're just entering the market with a bang, you know, cool side panel, lots of cable management options, glass on both sides, competitive price, beautiful high performance fans. Check out that video if you want to know what the air versus AIO performance is like when we populate all the 9 fans that this case can fit, or some more than 9.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
But they're also launching the white model. And huge thanks to our sponsors for making this trip possible: Thermaltake, Cooler Master, MSI, and Fantex. All right, so the white FT, everyone's trying to do white cases. I do appreciate that we do still have an accent front panel that is gunmetal, and the rest of the enclosure is white with proper white accents on the rest of the accessories inside the enclosure, in terms of thumb screws, in terms of motherboard standoffs, in terms of proper white fans too. So when it comes to building in the stock configuration, and let's say you're using all the white components, you're not going to be fighting the color scheme of the enclosure. And also look how beautiful the backside looks. I would love to route all my cables in here so that the rest stays nice and clean. You can also see the little text over here on these panels that really highlights that you can remove one or the other. The one thing that differentiates the FT1 is this little screen at the top. It's very discreet. It can either display CPU or your GPU temperature. And the thing is, when we're talking about this glossy plastic on the white enclosure, it does have a little bit of that clash effect between the gunmetal front panel, the rest of the white enclosure. So they're gonna try and figure things out with when they're finally launching this case. But the FT1 has to get in more hands, and I'm happy to see it in white. Vertical GPU brackets, nothing new, but we have the V2 version from Antec. This one's interesting because it will support Gen 4 riser cards. It's a 4-slot, this one occupies 7 PCI slots behind your enclosure. It's a universal bracket, so as long as you have 7 PCI slots and nothing underneath, you'll be able to use this. This one is interesting because it has that horizontal mobility. In case you want to offset the GPU away from the back panel, maybe slightly closer for visual purposes or maybe for airflow purposes, regardless. And we also have the V3. So basically the same idea of Gen 4 riser cable, comes in black and white, but this one steps things up a little bit. I don't normally get excited about GPU vertical brackets, but this one has the same horizontal mobility. This one has vertical mobility. Unscrewing these 2 screws and this whole platform drops a little bit. So right now it's in its highest position. This one actually has, 6 PCI slots. So that's a little bit more compact. And then you can lower the GPU perhaps closer to the fans at the bottom or away from a tower CPU heatsink, which normally does overhang over your tallest GPU. So they've thought about that. But also we have this width mobility, moving closer to the side panel, again, away from maybe your CPU cooler or other components that you might want to mount behind the vertical bracket. I like it. And then we have Antec entering the micro ATX game. You might see this and you might think, hey, wait a second, this already exists in the market. But Antec is taking the established formula that has been quite successful, and they're trying to improve on many of its elements. So for example, this enclosure is slightly wider or lengthier to allow for a massive ROG Strix 4090 to fit without any issues. So this is the Constellation 540, a micro ATX enclosure. 5 stands for 5 PCIe slots at the back, so not 4 like on other competing cases, and 40 because it can fit a 40 series GPU that, like this ROG Strix, that is absolutely massive behemoth without any issues. So on the interior, we have micro ATX motherboard. We have dual 360 radiator support at the top and the bottom to create beautiful vertical airflow. And since the power supply is at the front here, you can still mount a 120mm fan at the bottom, but you might as well be using something really short for the power supply because there isn't that much room underneath it, especially when you're starting to introduce more cables. And this case will come with 3 models. So all mesh at $79, an $89 silent model, so solid side panel with some sound dampening material inside, and a $99 model, which is what this is, with a TG panel on the side so you can display all your beautiful components, and a little screen that really turns this thing into a true microwave case. Microwave, micro ATX. We did have an unexpected little mishap, as you might see, by this beautiful fiery design. This does follow in the footsteps of what this looks like. We almost fried our motherboard. Actually, the motherboard did explode and it fried itself. We're not going to mention the names of it, but it does start with a micro something. Because it's MicroStar, you know? MicroStar International.
Hello, my friend. Luckily, on the positive side, the power supply in that system didn't die. But I also wanted to talk very quickly about power supplies because we've been looking at these small SFX power supplies. But there's another side to this whole story, and that is an effort to try to minimize the actual size of ATX power supplies for high wattage PSUs. So basically, this is what you would normally get in the 850 to 1,300 watt range. So this is 170 millimeters long. These, however, are also the same, actually they're higher output than the 750 watt power supply. They are actually that 140 millimeter form factor. So check this out. This is the Antec Neo Eco Gold Modular ATX 3.0. So we're looking at ATX 3.0, we're looking at 80 plus Gold, and PCIe 5.0 ready. These are extremely short power supplies, so they're going to fit in a bunch more systems than your typical higher wattage PSUs. In addition to that, you're looking at $149 for the 850 watt model, all the way up to, and it's not that bad, for the 1,300 watt model, you're looking at around $249. In addition to that, they are also going to come in this pretty cool white color. Right, so thank God Antec had a couple of great fans taking all of that smoke out of the case. Unfortunately, the smoke detectors didn't go off. So who knows if they're actually working or not. But anyways, I wanted to move on to a couple of fans here because they're really linking into some trends. So first of all, they are releasing a bunch of 30 millimeter thick models here for the RGB fans. One thing I wanted to show is that these Neo Prism T3s, just this RGB ring around here is almost perfectly diffused. A lot of the times, especially with some of the fans that we've seen at this show from Corsair, you're paying a ton of money for the fan, but you can almost still see those individual LEDs on there. This though, even though it's a prototype, it is still so much better than a lot of them that we've seen on the show floor. And moving on from the Neo Prism T3, we're actually going to go down here, and this is another one of those trends that Antec is capitalizing on. What we are looking at here are both forwards and reverse models of their Tranquil series. So this Tranquil series actually has a pretty unique focus, and that unique focus is to hit 30 decibels at least 2,000 RPM. There's not a lot of fans that can do that, but I do have to mention the whole decibel, airflow, and also static pressure conversation is one that we need to have a little bit more closely in the fan market, because even though they're saying 30 decibels, we don't know the methodology that was actually used to achieve that 30 decibels. So Antec's 30 decibels might be somebody else's 32 decibels. So anyways, that's part of a very large video that we're actually putting together. But anyway, so these forwards and reverse models really do focus on silence nonetheless. You're also going to see that the fan blades, unlike the Phanteks D30, are completely different for the forwards and reverse models. That's because Antec says that in order to capitalize on that silence approach, you actually need those different fan blades. The reverse requires a different pitch in order to make sure that it's as quiet as possible. Same thing with the forwards model, because in order to get the best airflow, static pressure, and noise envelope, you actually need to completely redesign the fan blades depending on the direction that the fan is pulling in the air from. So the last thing here is the Fusion 120 is something that we've already seen on the market. So that's basically a clear lucite panel over the ARGB. It's also a 30 millimeter thick fan. What they're doing now is they're bringing it into a 140 millimeter form factor. You're actually going to see that this, unlike other 140 millimeter ARGB fans, is actually able to maintain somewhat decent static pressure, even though it is a 140 millimeter fan. So anyways, I'm looking forward to seeing all of these throughout the year as we do different roundups of fans, but that's pretty much it from here at Antec. I'm Mike with Hardware Canucks, Dimitri is over there, and I hope you have a great day. Take care, guys.